This morning on CBS, an eerie stillness covers the south shore of Long Island, east of New York City, where a Paris-bound TWA jumbo jet crashed shortly after takeoff. Hello, everybody, from East Monarch's Long Island. I am Russ Mitchell. East Monarch is about 40 miles east of Manhattan. Hattie?
Good morning, Russ. I'm Hattie Kaufman in New York. Throughout the night, the waterborne flames served as a silent vigil for the 229 people aboard Flight 800, bound for Paris from New York's Kennedy Airport. Full coverage begins this Thursday morning, the 18th of July.
And welcome back. I'm Russ Mitchell in East Moriches, New York, I should say. What caused this disaster? There are just so many questions this morning as hope fades that any of the 229 people on board have survived. Here is the latest. A Boeing 747-100 en route to Paris from JFK went down off the southern shore of Long Island, about 50 miles east of Manhattan, just after sunset last night. 212 passengers and a crew of 17 were reported on board. It is believed none has survived. Rescue workers worked through the night recovering wreckage and human remains. Now, the investigation this morning is being led by a task force from the FBI and New York City Police. Witnesses say they heard at least one explosion, maybe two, and then some witnesses say they saw in the sky something that looked like a fireball. The jet had come from Athens, Greece to JFK. It was on the ground in New York for about 3 hours before heading to Paris. 20 minutes later, it vanished from radar screens, and at this point, there is no word if the pilots made a distress call. Jackie Adams has been here throughout the night. She has more on the investigation.
Well, Russ, just in the last 5 minutes, a convoy of New York City police scuba divers drove past here to begin the very grim search for bodies. It's a search that's been extremely frustrating all night.
In the darkness, all one could see were the glow of searchlights, helicopters overhead, and trucks belonging to the Suffolk County morgue going by. At last count, the medical examiner's office had recovered 30 bodies, most of them charred and badly burned. Rescuers said their job was made harder by three things: the darkness, there was no moon, a 5-mile-long oil slick left by the burning fuel in the fully loaded aircraft, and the water 120 feet deep. Suffolk County Executive Robert Gaffney flew over the scene at about 4 a.m.
It was difficult to see that it's dark, and you can see searchlights playing over the waters. You could see that there were a lot of things floating in and around the water, but it was difficult to see anything more than that, although there were fires burning on the surface of the water.
Compounding the difficulty of the search was the crush of boats in the water, some 20 Coast Guard vessels, as well as the curious, some of whom picked up body parts and debris despite official warnings not to.
If you find anything that's crash-related, either on the beach or in the water or anyplace else, don't touch it, don't do anything with it. It may be part of a chain of evidence that will be necessary later on.
The Coast Guard says that it is technically calling this a rescue operation, a search for survivors, until about 8:30 this morning for about another hour and a half. After that, it will be purely a search for bodies. Bodies which the medical examiner says may contain possible clues, perhaps bomb fragments, perhaps some sort of chemicals, clues as to the possible cause of this terrible crash. Hattie?
Actually, Jackie, there is word this morning that the authorities are asking folks who live in this area to be aware that on the beaches, this is pretty gruesome, but pieces of bodies could wash on shore or pieces of planes. Have you heard anything about that at all?
Well, actually, that was something that the Suffolk County executive had been talking about all night. There are a tremendous number of body parts, a tremendous number of pieces of debris from the plane. All of them are potential evidence in this crash. And it stretches, the slick stretches for about 5 miles behind us. And with the current, pieces could turn up anywhere.
Okay, Jackie Adams, thank you very much. Right now, we want to go to Washington, D.C. Jim Hall is chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board. He joined us with the latest. Good morning, Jim.
Normally, this flight would have had about...
Jim, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Good morning, sir. I can hear you just fine. Good morning. Tell me the latest. What do you know thus far?
Well, as we normally do with major aviation accidents, we have launched one of our multidisciplinary GO teams from our Washington, D.C. office. I anticipate they will arrive at the accident site within the hour, and we will begin piecing together the various factual information that's necessary for us to determine exactly what happened to Flight 800.
Of course, a crucial part of the investigation, I would think, would be finding those coveted black boxes. How optimistic are you that you're going to be able to find them?
Well, I'm very optimistic. I can't put a time frame on it, but the black boxes, of course, have pingers on them that will help identify them if they are underwater. So we hopefully will be able to recover them, return them to our offices here in Washington that are directly behind me, read those out and find out information that will lead us down the road of either this being an aviation accident or a criminal act.
Jim, of course, there is a lot of speculation this morning that there was criminal activity involved here, that this was, in fact, an explosion or a bomb. I know nothing has been determined yet, but what is your take on that? Any thoughts on that at all at this point?
Well, the thoughts are that it's very important that all the agencies responsibly proceed to do our job for the taxpayers and determine what happened. We have, in a number of instances, worked with the FBI and other authorities where there was a thought that a bomb or explosion had occurred when we found out later that it was not the result of a criminal act. So we have all got to coordinate to get all the information together as quickly as possible so we'll know what we're dealing with, and as we do in all of our investigations, as we have evidence and information that is factual, that will be presented to the American people.
Okay, Jim Hull, the National Transportation Safety Board. I know you've got a busy day ahead of you. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. We appreciate it.
Troy, thank you.
And right now we want to go to our CBS News correspondent Bob Orr, aviation expert, safety expert, also joining us from Washington. Bob, what can you tell us?
Well, Russ, you heard the chairman of the NTSB say that within the hour the GO team should get to the crash scene. And over the next several hours, we may get